Hi, and welcome to Omnichannel Identities, Connecting Marketers with Real People, a one-to-one webinar sponsored by Neustar. I'm Tom Hoffman at One-to-One Media, and I'll be the moderator for today's event, where we'll be exploring why it's so critical for marketers to be able to identify customers and prospects at any point in their omnichannel journeys in order to provide them with the type of personalized and relevant messaging that delivers maximum results. Our speakers today are Martha Rogers, Ph.D. and founding partner at Peppers & Rogers Group, and Rashmi Vittal, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Neustar. Martha and Rashmi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Happy to be here, Tom.
Before I review the full agenda, I'd like to offer our attendees a few pointers on using the On24 tool. First, please be sure to turn off your pop-up blockers to enable a survey that we'll be conducting during the webinar. If you should encounter any technical issues during the webinar, please click on the Help button that's located at the bottom of the screen. Also, feel free to tweet about today's webinar using the hashtag that's shown here. Now for today's agenda. In this webinar, our presenters will provide insights on the following: why accurate customer identification is so critical to connect with today's omnichannel customer, and how it's essential to optimize audience targeting and remarketing. We'll also examine how an authoritative customer identification methodology can be used to improve cross-channel, cross-device campaign, and closed-loop measurement. We'll also share real-world examples of how a reliable omnichannel customer identification practice can improve marketing precision, call center productivity, efficiency, and sales. And this will be followed by an audience Q&A with our speakers. In many respects, the digital revolution has created incredible opportunities for marketers. Thanks to the volumes of customer interaction data that's available, marketers now have oceans of customer information that can be used to learn more about their customers and provide customers with more personalized and relevant messaging. Just to help put this in some kind of perspective, mobile data traffic alone is expected to grow tenfold by 2019. Yet despite the torrents of customer data that are available, inaccurate, incomplete, and outdated customer data makes it extremely difficult for marketers to accurately identify and connect with customers and prospects at critical points in their omnichannel customer journeys. At this point, I'd like to hand the discussion to Rashmi, who will share more with us on the challenges and opportunities associated with omnichannel customer identification. Rashmi?
Sure, great. Thanks, Tom. So with all that data explosion, the result of which is coming from the fact that you have so many customer touch points in today's world. And if you think about the touch points in which customer interacts, it's quite daunting. And, you know, I happen to right now be in the market for dining room chairs. You know, I got a great deal on a beautiful but unique farmhouse table, and I've been really eager to find some chairs to match that table. And I've been on just about every website possible using my home iPad, surfing my work laptop, of course, during breaks, searched on my mobile when I'm taking BART to and from work. And in fact, once I actually called into one of the furniture companies to see if I can better understand the timelines for delivery on their custom chairs. Now, I visited various furniture shops in store to continue to conduct my research. And I guess you could say I'm just currently obsessed with dining chairs, and I could be categorized as somebody who is definitely in market. But this has not been a linear customer journey, but rather a sporadic one. The reality is that consumers want to interact, but they want to interact on their own terms, ebbing and flowing out of different channels and devices to do so. Yet, only 35% of marketers have a strategy to effectively engage with consumers in a consistent, relevant manner. And oftentimes, it may only be in just one or two of these channels. For example, just this morning, I saw a retargeting ad on my Facebook page from the last furniture shop I visited online. Now, you can consider the phone call that I placed, which I had no follow-up from, was a missed opportunity. And so, Martha, what does that mean from a customer's point of view?
What does it mean that what is the impact that all this has? I mean, think about it. A recent Gartner survey showed that the annual marketing operating budgets are going to total 10% of their company's revenue, but that out of that, 18% is going to be spent on projects that are impacting customer experience. That's over $558 billion with a B in 2013 alone, and of course rising as we speak. So here we are spending millions on websites and integrating online and offline touch points and trying to be relevant to people who are buying dining room tables, Rashmi. And so here's what it really all amounts to is the customers remember us, whether we remember them or not. So even if a customer ends up looking like a bunch of different customers to us because we're not connecting that information about a particular customer across our channel silos, then the truth is she still only sees us as one company because we have our same logo on everything. And so sometimes that just looks completely disconnected to her. So the question that we need to ask is why? Why doesn't everybody do this? I mean, we've been Don Peppers and I have been working on this for the last 20 years. So why isn't this happening everywhere, Rashmi?
Yeah, no, Martha, it's true. Well, the fact of the matter is personalization at every touch point, which you consider as the holy grail for marketers, is really tough to solve, right? And in order to solve it, you really need to have a single comprehensive view of the consumer that is represented across all channels accurately. And so you say, great, okay, let's go do that. Let's go build that single view of customer. I'm totally on it. Well, there are challenges with it. Think about it. How many times has your own personal information changed over the past, even 3, 5, 7 years, right? Or how much new personal information is there about you, like a phone number or email address or even a social handle? Over 75 million consumers change their phone carriers a year. 45 million change their phone numbers. And if you think about this, 2.1 million people legally change their name a year. The other sticky point is that publicly available information has rapidly declined. Once a reliable form to identify a household, landlines are now something of the distant past. In fact, 41% of U.S. households were wireless only by the end of 2013, according to research from the National Center for Health Statistics. So think about it yourself. How many of you put your mobile phone number down these days when you sign up for a new account? And lastly, all of which makes data verification very hard. So as a marketer, we're doomed, right? Well, we're never going to get to build our single view. We're never going to be able to get to build our single view of customer. But of course, if that was the case, today's session would be very thin. In fact, Martha and I will take you through a framework to help you start thinking about how to solve this problem. We'll get into how you can identify customers on any channel and maintain that persistent connection. We'll discuss ways in which customer data can be kept up to date and accurate. And when you have accurate customer data, it really feeds into how you create relevant cross-channel audiences. And lastly, we'll tie it all together for how you can use this to help you unify your marketing programs cross-channel. So Martha, help us kick off the first step.
Well, the first thing we've got to do is just make it easy for the customer. There's not a customer on earth who's sitting around saying, gee, how can I make it easy for XYZ company to get hold of me? Instead, these are people who are just living their lives and they have lots of representations. You're so right. I got to tell you something. I have 7 email addresses that I use for various reasons, and I have 6 phone numbers for work and home. So, some of them are mobile and some of them not. And so, we haven't even talked about what's coming in mobile and what it does to marketers. I mean, think about it. Mobile is to marketing what the internet is to finding out. It's just, it's what customers use now to sort of live through their micro moments. More customers use mobile when they want to know where, when they want to know what product, when they want to know what about a product, when they want to know about a service or an activity. 60% of screen use today is mobile. Only 40% is on computers or pads. It's remarkable now. I don't know how young people, of course, can see those little tiny screens, but it's really a remarkable thing to think about how mobile we really are. You think about it. Back in the 1980s, the direct-to-consumer channel closed the final mile, but now the mobile closes the final minute. So it's not so much about be an experience as it is about be prepared. Because our goal now, Rashmi, is to see one human being, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Martha. And let's talk a little bit about those various interactions that yield different types of identifiers about people. I mean, you mentioned that you had 7 different identifiers about you, multiple email addresses and phone numbers. Well, if we go back to my quest of trying to find those dining room chairs, right? Think about just the identifiers that are generated there. The cookie associated to the browser on my work laptop is a different identifier than the mobile number I called into the call center, to the device ad ID that linked my interaction on my home iPad. Those are right there 3 different identifiers, but none resolving to one person. Not to mention the outside of this use case, that there are a bunch of other ways that I can be, quote unquote, represented across both offline and online channels, known and unknown interactions. Now, compound that by the fact that many of the identifiers and the data exhaust that comes with it are collected and stored in multiple systems. You got your CRM systems, you got your direct marketing systems, you got your digital ad tech systems, where the data in the systems are not integrated across to one another. In fact, a lot of that data is left in their own silos. Now, there are various ways to tackle this problem, and many of them fall short because they don't look at both the offline and online side of identity and forming that single view of a consumer. Many times, solutions only solve the online problem, meaning that they're connecting perhaps a subset of cookies to a subset of mobile devices. But what is unique about what we're doing at Neustar is that our approach to identity is founded on being able to link all identifiers to an offline authoritative identity that is corroborated daily and links to across 220 million individuals and 120 million households and 260 million unique devices across the U.S. Now, our company grew up in the offline telecommunications space. And that said, we were one of the first companies to bring verified identity from the offline world into the online world. Now, as a neutral third party, we have a unique set of data sets tied not only to consumer identity, but also tied to over 15,000 offline and online consumer attributes that are virtually irreplicable in the marketplace. And what that brings you is turning up your marketing into high definition, because you can now get a complete view of your consumer that then you can market with relevancy. And I say because one-to-one marketing is a hot topic right now, it's really important to know that not all identity methodologies are created equally. So remember how many offline identifiers and online identifiers I had or I talked about? Well, I myself have about 10 to 12 different identifiers active at any time. The key is to aggregate and resolve these identifiers to the same person. Now, Neustar's identity methodology takes the 10 different me's, in this case, and resolves them to the one me through a persistent ID, who can then be reached in many ways. So with that persistent ID, I've now consolidated all those identifiers to that one thing, and now that one thing can be used consistently to then layer on people, businesses, places, things that they can associate to me.
Right, and this is how you connect with people and not just with a device. Let's just stay on that slide for just a second. That's how you connect with people and not just with a device, and then another device, and then another device, and so on. But the real trick here, isn't it, is not to become sort of creepy. I mean, Rashmi, how do we make sure that we protect privacy in this process?
Well, I'll get into it a little bit more, but absolutely, privacy is certainly key and integral to this part, and it's something that we at Neustar take very, very seriously. But and I'll explain that in a second. But the next thing about kind of what we're able to do is the fact that you can take the key that takes our framework very unique is that we now corroborate our identity using the network effect of 4 billion daily transactional data to provide the most fresh, accurate, and relevant consumer identity. And yes, all of this absolutely has to be done with a laser focus on privacy and security. If you think about our history a little bit, we're grounded in the principle of neutrality and built on the foundation of trust, privacy, and security. So we use state-of-the-art practices to protect customer and consumer information that ensures confidentiality. And these best practices are not only built into our identity methodology, but built into everything we do, built into the solutions that we offer and how they leverage and power identity to help marketers precision with more accuracy. So Martha, I think we've made the case for the importance of having the right identity methodology. What is your take on the next challenge?
Well, let me ask you a question, and that is, gee, what percentage of customer information is outdated after a year, and how do we deal with that?
Well, drum roll. So honestly, it's quite shocking. Neustar conducted some research, and the answer is 30% in year one. And if you see the diagram, I know it's quite interesting. And if you see that diagram, right, it continues to slope downwards, and by year 3, less than 40% of your customers' data is accurate. And if you think about it,
and it's not surprising, really, because, as you said, people move, they change their names, and not just women getting married and kids getting adopted. My son doesn't want to go by his first name anymore, so he's dropping his first name, and he's legally changing it. I mean, a lot of stuff like that goes on, and that affects all these data inputs. So that really brings us to step 2, which is about cleansing and appending your CRM data. So we've got all this changing. We've got all this way of approaching things. What do we do next, Rashmi?
Yeah, I think really the way to look at it, right, is that one is you want to make sure that your customer data is accurate, right? You want to make sure that you can also take what's there, which is usually not the whole view to begin with about your customer data, and be able to add it with additional data. And then once you feel confident that you can create a definitive profile, then you can use that for true personalization. And honestly, this is something that is not just once and done. You must be able to wash, rinse, and repeat this process over and over again.
Yeah, that repeat part is really important.
Yeah, the repeat part is really important. So if we take a look at a little bit more of what we mean, here's an example, right? We have a customer record that a marketer could have in their customer database, right? Where there's a name, John Smith, an address, a phone number, and a mobile number and an email address, right? We can help identify and validate using these identifiers against our authoritative data sets to confirm which ones are active and which ones are not. We assign a Neustar key to that record, and then that also allows us to append any latest information we might be able to have about John. Now, you might have another record in your CRM database of John, but it's slightly different. Notice that the name is a little bit misspelled. You've got a different mobile phone number, and you've got an altogether different email address. So what we can do is take this record and compare it to the previous record that's joined because of the Neustar key, and then we can cleanse and append the data points and create what is ultimately a master record that eliminates the out-of-date information and only keeps the current valid information. Now, using this cleanse and append solution, we actually have a customer case study here that's interesting. It's a large consumer electronics company, and they received over 30 million inbound calls to the call center annually. Now, of those 30 million, 67% of the calls could not be identified. This resulted, I know, it's quite a bit, because it actually resulted in $25 million in annual costs to correctly identify and route callers to the right sales folks.
So it was costing a lot of money to deliver a mediocre experience.
Yeah, it really was. And if you think about what they did consequentially, like that $25 million annual cost, it was really the tedious, manual, time-consuming process of trying to correctly identify and route those callers to the right people.
Right.
And what they needed, though, was a way to do this in real time, right, in an automated fashion that was reliable and accurate. And so they used Neustar to identify unknown callers in real time that not only validated the customer against their CRM data and our data sets, but also appended additional information as needed. As a result, we were able to identify 54% of the unidentified customers because we were able to successfully match them to not only the company's CRM data, but as well as our data.
Wow.
And then agent call handling efficiencies resulted in $13.8 million in annual savings and increased customer satisfaction as a result of getting faster, personalized answers to their customer queries.
Yeah, this raises an important point, which is that a lot of times when companies are looking at these capabilities and they're saying, well, we're really, we should be better at this than we are, but how much is it going to cost us to put these capabilities in place? And what this story raises for us is the question of, gee, how much would it cost not to do this? Because it saves us money, it increases customer value by increasing their satisfaction levels and creating better experiences. So all in all, it's sort of a no-brainer. And that's
absolutely correct.
Right. So, it really echoes back to what we've been talking about working with companies on for years, and that is how to treat different customers differently, because customers are different. They have different needs from us. They have different values to us. And although we have other ways of understanding those needs and values, they certainly have different behaviors toward us too, and those are the easiest ways that we can see what they are needing from us and how much they're going to be worth to us. So when we think about needs, why is it that customers are looking for something in the first place? They're not out to try to buy our product. They're out to solve a problem. And when we think about the behavior, what can we look at? And that's not just the stuff that we are sitting around waiting to measure. If we're smart, what that means is that every time a customer is looking for something like the chairs to match a table, or every time the customer is calling and asking us a question, or every time, it's not just about the transactions, it's also about the interactions. And that means that we really can understand a lot more about a customer if we just remember and record and analyze that data. And that helps us understand how much different customers are going to be worth to us, which helps us understand how much it's worth to spend solving a particular problem. We might have the same problem for two customers, but if one customer is potentially worth a lot more to us, then we would spend more trying to solve that problem. Of course, we're going to be great to everybody, but we're going to be even more great to some people. And it helps us just to use our resources better and to make sure that we're putting those resources in the very best places. So this ability to differentiate customers by treating them differently is imperative. And that really leads us to the third step.
That's exactly right. And just to have to hearken it the most is the fact that to be able to get personalized means that you need to know your customer. And to know your customer, we've already established that it's very important to have a single view of your consumer based on customer data that's fresh and accurate. But when you then have that, you can turn that single view of the customer into a rich customer profile. A customer profile that not only includes demographic information, which is pretty easy to get these days, but also purchase behaviors, those consumer attributes that give more life to your consumer, as well as other things like lifestyle patterns, buying propensities, brand affinities. These are quite important in terms of understanding what are the needs and wants of the consumer, along with the additional digital and offline information that you get. And what we see is when we actually have the ability to take all this data, use various types of analytic methods to try to be able to better understand and see which purchase behaviors or which demographic information or which lifestyle patterns, and the combination of those will build the best results in terms of the customer profiles and the audiences that you want to create. And those customer profiles can be used across multiple channels. And that's the other key thing, is in order to deliver that relevant, consistent message, you need to be able to standardize those customer profiles across your channels.
Right, so that you can see a customer completely. And yet, there's still so many companies that follow what we think of as the Goldfish Principle. This whole idea of if you saw the movie Finding Nemo, everybody with kids will remember this from just a few years ago. There's one of the characters in that movie, I mean, they're all great characters, but one of them is named Dory, and she's a blue goldfish, and she is just like real biological goldfish, who, as it turns out, when they're swimming in the open sea, don't need a short-term memory because they move around a lot. They're very migratory. And that makes them great aquarium fish, because you put them into an aquarium and they never get bored. They swim around the aquarium, and every single time they go around, wow, they get to see new scenery every single time. So it's great for them. But, it was bad for Dory, because every time she would see you, she was wonderful and she was sweet and she would help you and she would do anything she could for you. But if she turned around and lost sight of you, then when she turned back around, you had to tell her who you were again, and you had to start all over. And, gee, it would be just as easy to start all over with some other sweet person. And that's really the problem that we have, is that it would be just as easy to start all over someplace else. It's not enough just to have, random acts of kindness that people can do in at your company. So teaching everybody to be sweet is one thing, but teaching them how to really build on the knowledge of another company, of another channel, and all the data that we have about that customer is even more important. I can tell you a quick story. This is a true story. A friend of ours who's the CEO of a company, and he lives in Fairfield, New Fairfield, Connecticut. And you know what? I can tell this story later. It's a great story, and we'll get to it in a bit. First, let's go to step 4.
No, absolutely. No, go. We have plenty of time. Tell the story. I think people would be interested.
Well, it's an interesting story, because what happened was that this guy did a huge amount of banking at a particular bank, and all of his personal banking was there, and he's a big customer. And so he drives up one day to their little parking lot, and it's a Saturday, and the person that was supposed to be there wasn't there. And so he takes his parking slip that he wants to get validated so he doesn't have to pay for parking, since he's already been horribly inconvenienced. And he takes it to a person who then confirms that he is, in fact, a customer of the bank, and that he did have this particular issue with this particular account. But she wouldn't validate it because he didn't do a transaction there that day. And so he went home, and he did a transaction, which was to close down everything in that bank and put it all someplace else, because all that person could see was that he just had one question about one account that he had at that bank, instead of being able to see him for the extremely valuable customer that he was, and realize that, gee, maybe we could solve the problem another way. We could roll this into some other account. There was no ability to connect him to the calls that he had made or any of the other work that he had done in that bank. And so he conducted the transaction. He closed it down, and then she validated his parking ticket. And that's the kind of thing we'd like to see prevented. And that's why we need step 4.
Absolutely. And it's a great example of the importance of being able to unify your marketing programs so that they are truly aware of the omnichannel experience. So whether, per your example, whether it's multiple phone calls or an online transaction or an in-person interaction, these things need to be connected and relevant. And so, Martha, we've covered a lot of ground, but in your experience, what are the key words of wisdom you can share to our audience about being able to take a look at step 4 and execute on step 4?
Well, we just happen to have a checklist here that will help us think about this. when you think about the capabilities that companies really need so that they don't follow the Goldfish Principle, first of all, they've got to have operational excellence at all touch points at all times, so that I feel comfortable when I go through any channel that the company knows who I am. That means that they can remember each customer from event to event, so it's over time through all channels. And then it's also a capability of making sure that the individual customer feedback is acted on. So we do something for this customer that he can't get from somebody who doesn't know all this stuff that we know from all these channels. And we were able to integrate and fully integrate the multiple touch points, which means that then we can really build that feedback loop that drives product development. So beyond serving each customer that we have today, we're actually able to use this information to build what we're going to need to do next for customers, and that really results in a faster cycle time to get new products out there that our customers are going to need. Now, this really comes from what we've always called a learning relationship. Learning relationship, tells the customer, that he tells us what he wants and how he wants it, not necessarily because we ask him, but just because of what we said earlier, that we're paying attention to what he's doing and asking, and he's, where he's going and what he's up to. And then we change something about our product or our service or even just our communication so that what he's getting from us makes the most sense based on the fact that we remember and act on what he's told us. And that means that the more effort that a customer invests, the greater their stake is in making the relationship work, because he's not going to want to go start over again someplace else. I know that Amazon knows all the books I've ever bought on my Kindle, and therefore I probably won't start over with another e-reader, because every now and then I try to buy the same book again, forgetting that I've already got it in the Kindle and I haven't read it yet. And Amazon says, Martha, you don't want to do that. You've already paid for that. And I say, oh, God, thanks, guys. And it's not even their fault. It's my fault. And yet they're helping me. So I wouldn't want to start over again someplace else. And so I find it more convenient to remain loyal rather than reteach a competitor, because part of that learning is accumulating insights. I mean, really refining the learning relationship through measurement and analytics and achieving a really meaningful kind of customer experience that makes the most sense over the long run. So it really leads to and reminds me of a way of doing business in that a company follows in Japan that's called Toyama no Kosuri Uri. And this particular company that I'm thinking of, they actually, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, by the way, that they sell house-to-house medical supplies. What they do is they put up a little medicine cabinet in your home, and then they come around every so often, and they refill what you have in your cabinet, and then they charge you just for what you've used, and they keep track of that in a database which they call a daifukucho. And, of course, they know that your household, Rashmi, needs more stomach ailment remedies, and so when they get to my house, we need more Band-Aids because we're so clumsy, and so they're able to tailor what's in the cabinet, and so it works like a really glorified hotel minibar, only tailored for each household. But what's very interesting about this story is that this company is not one of these modern companies that we've been talking about. This is a company that started way back in 1750, and this company has, it's basically always been there. They've been the customers, these houses have been the customers of these companies since, almost 3 centuries. They want us when they want us, and this is an old-fashioned idea, but now it's new and better, and we have better tools, and they make it work on a larger scale through lots of channels. So I know you have a modern example, so that brings us right up to date, Rashmi.
Yeah, so I was going to say, let's bring it up to the 21st century. Today, we are, excuse me one second. Today, we're working with a cable and entertainment company, and what they're trying to do is they actually receive over 90,000 website visitors a day. They have over 35% of their visitors who are unauthenticated browse and then leave the site, right? That's a pretty common action. And what they needed to do is identify and re-engage those prospects effectively. So they use one of our solutions called Omnichannel Remarketing to capture those anonymous web visitors, identify and match them back to our authoritative data sets, and remove any dedupes, and then have those leads that met certain maybe business rule criteria, some kind of suppress any leads that weren't the ones that they were trying to go after. For example, could be an existing customer, and then they would re-engage with them via email. They also applied the same solution to call center callers who would call and not convert. The result was over 30,000 follow-up emails to interested web visitors and callers that drove 5,000 new cable and internet subscriptions in just a 4-week trial. Wow. And that netted out an average of $85 monthly revenue per new subscriber.
Good grief. So we're back to how much does it cost to do it? No. How much does it cost not to do it?
That's exactly right. And the other interesting thing about this example is that it really is using not only identity but the customer data as well as analytics to better tie between the offline channels and the online channels. And that's increasingly more important for companies that are running multi-channel marketing programs.
Of course. You know what this really says is that it's the show me, you know me economy. And that's really the most important piece for this, is that we make it clear to this customer that we know her. And if we don't, somebody else will. So let's think about how to build customer confidence and value. We'll just go through the 4 steps. Step 1 we've been looking at is accurate customer identification across channels. So I really understand this customer. I understand her across all channels, across time, across all product lines. Step 2, I keep the data up to date. I append data as I need to, but I certainly keep it clean, and I keep it in a way that continues to be useful even after 6 months or a year or more. Step 3, I know each customer, and I use the information that I have about her for actionable segmentation and then treating those customers and groups of customers differently. And finally, I'm able to think in terms of real-time personalization and true omnichannel marketing. So I am able to do for this customer what's right for her at the right moment with the exact right offer, and to be the solution that she needs me to be, because she wants me when she wants me and where she wants me. And if I'm not available right then she'll find somebody else that will be in a second or two. So what are our primary takeaways here, Rashmi?
Well, I think what we've learned is that, and some of it's probably not too shocking, is the fact that customers really want a seamless experience and will engage on their own terms. In order to meet their needs, right, marketers need to build true, intelligent, omnichannel strategies that will apply across channels, right? And further being able to deliver on that objective, you have to have a comprehensive view of consumers using the right approach to identity and customer data through every channel. And lastly, you need to be able to build upon those learning relationships. Use data and analytics and use those to your advantage to be more relevant. So on behalf of Martha and myself, it has been a pleasure sharing this interesting, fun topic with you. We're going to now open it up for Q&A. So at this time, I'm going to hand it back over to Tom.
Great. Thanks so much, Rashmi, and thanks, Martha. I loved how you both painted such an elaborate picture for us on how data quality is constantly changing, along with these great case study examples about the business benefits that can be obtained through identifying customers accurately. So at this point, we'd like to jump into the audience Q&A with our presenters. First, a few reminders. If you'd like a copy of the deck, click on the green widget at the bottom of the screen. If you've missed part of the presentation or you'd like to share it with a colleague, all attendees will receive an email with a link to the archived version. I'd also like to remind everyone about the survey that will be posted during the Q&A period. Please take a moment to participate. Again, you'll need to turn off your pop-up blockers to enable the survey. So let's begin the Q&A. To ask a question, click the red Q&A widget in your presentation window. And if we don't get to your question, we'll email you with a response. So I'd like to start with a question for Rashmi. And Rashmi, you've spoken a lot about identity and how it's important, but can you also share how Neustar can help with closed-loop measurement?
Yeah, sure. Happy to, Tom. Just as important, it is to make sure your CRM data is up to date for you to deliver on that omnichannel experience. It's also important for you to be able to measure cross-channel, to see what's working, to see what's not. So you need a way to tie in those customer interactions and attribute them directly to sales or customer satisfaction. And Neustar can help marketers close the loop and measure the success of campaigns by accurately crediting media, leads, sales, and conversions to individual campaigns that users are exposed to online. Now, it's all made possible by connecting consumer interactions with Neustar's authoritative identity, the breadth of data, and the technology, and the various partnership integrations and analytics that we bring to bear.
Okay, thanks. So, Rashmi, how does this work for business to business versus B2C marketing?
Yeah, so it's a great question. There are ways I think in which this can work for B2B. While predominantly most of the examples that we've talked about here is predominantly B2C, there's a growing need to be able to support B2B in this real-time fashion, and that's something that Neustar is definitely looking into. From the point of view of a targeting perspective, Neustar currently today has business audience data that we use to help businesses target their clients more reliably.
Got it, thanks. Rashmi, you'd also spoken earlier about data cleansing and appending. Can you share with us how you cleanse and append data when personally identifiable information is such a hot topic these days?
Yeah, for sure, and happy to explain this because it is a very important topic. We do a lot of things to ensure the privacy of a customer, and a lot of that, first off, just even begins with the fact that we are responsible for the use of personal information and make sure that we're committed to ensure that businesses can make better decisions and deliver personalized content without sacrificing that individual privacy. So as I mentioned before in my presentation, we do have a lot of what we call privacy by design principles that take personal privacy and make sure that it's carried throughout the process from designing, building, and delivering the information products, services that we offer. And so the data that we provide, right, does not contain or convey any personal information, identifiable information about consumers that you would not already have within your CRM. And what we do is make sure that your data is correct and up to date without sacrificing the individual's privacy.
Certainly. Martha, let's talk about loyalty for a moment. How can a company's inability to identify a customer accurately during an interaction impact loyalty?
Well, what it means is that they're saying that you're not that important to them, but it's a simple process, really. I mean, there are two kinds of, say, drugstores. The ones where I usually shop, near my house, and so they have a complete picture of what I buy there. If I stop into my to the drugstore, the same brand of drugstore, but it's near my office, and they can't see me, then they don't know how to remind me that I might be running out of something or how to make it more valuable for me. And so therefore, what it really means is that it's just as easy for me to have to go to someplace else instead. And that's the way it really costs us. If we don't remember things for a customer, if we're not available to her in a continuing way through different channels, across products, across locations, across time, then it's just as easy for her to start over completely somewhere else.
Great advice, Martha. Thanks. Well, thank you again to Rashmi Vittal and Martha Rogers for sharing their insights with us today. And thank you all for joining us. Any unanswered questions that have been sent to us will be addressed by email. This concludes Omnichannel Identities, Connecting Marketers with Real People, a one-to-one webinar sponsored by Neustar. On behalf of the entire team, thanks for attending and have a great day.